campfire last night.
You don't have your
Stayed up here
speaker.
too long. That goes to that.
Is that why it said video has no sound when it popped on?
What's that? That up there should have sound. Yeah. Yeah, the mic doesn't do anything for that.
Okay.
Mike is from the road press.
Okay. So everybody can still hear us?
Yeah. Yeah, they can hear it. I believe they can hear it. I hope they can. It's anybody complaining about sound?
I just pulled it up and so far no.
Okay. Everybody here okay out there? I'm just gonna leave that down. It doesn't do anything anyway. Okay. It's good to be back this morning, and hope everything is going well for you. It's Easter morning here. I know most of your places it's Easter evening, except for those of us in Canada and United States and South America. So I hope you had a good Easter, and
We got sound. We're good.
yeah. I'd written something for Good Friday that I read here on Friday evening, in our Friday evening session. And I wrote this afterwards, just thinking about everything. I put, the evening of Good Friday came with Jesus dead, after darkness for 3 hours in Israel. The temple veil was ripped apart. The most holy was in plain view. Everything was in chaos. The disciples and followers were afraid because rumors had begun that with the help of the priests, Rome would gather up and kill the disciples of Jesus. The disciples were hiding through the night. Rome had the tomb surrounded with soldiers so no one could take the body away and claim he was alive. The ladies had watched where Jesus was laid to rest, and on the Sabbath day prepared spices and perfumes for the body, so they could go there on the first day of the week and take care of him. They felt that he had been forsaken, and they didn't want to leave the body unprepared. After hiding on the Sabbath, the women went to the tomb on Sunday morning early at the rising of the sun. They found the tomb empty, the stone rolled away, and 2 angels sitting at each end of the tomb. The angels told them he had risen and not to seek the living among the dead. What a rush it was in their hearts to hear Moses and Elijah sit there and tell them that Jesus was alive. The ladies went immediately to the brethren with the message of the resurrection. The disciples doubted their account, ran to the tomb, found it to be so. They all left, but Mary stayed behind. Saw a person she thought was the gardener taking care of the area, and she asked, "Do you know where they have taken the body of my Lord?" He said to her, "Mary," and immediately she knew that voice, her good friend, her loved one, Jesus. She had stayed behind because she couldn't imagine her friend Jesus rose from the dead and didn't talk with her. She knew the love between them. At the end of the day, they all met in a room together and discussed all that had happened. Cleopas and Simon came back from Emmaus and told of meeting him on the road and how he revealed himself to them. As they were together enjoying the fellowship, Jesus appeared to them, bolstering their faith. The season of the resurrection was on and would continue for generations and dispensations. The worst 3 days of their lives had become the most glorious time for all humanity. And afterwards they thought he couldn't be alive. The life and light of humanity had stepped from the tomb. Not only had our minds been opened to a new world, also the way for the Spirit to progress from the blood age into the Spirit age have been paved, and the word had spread. Jesus Christ is alive from the dead, and he's alive forevermore. Imagining being there, thinking about each character from Good Friday all the way through to that Sunday morning, the feelings that they all had of disappointment. Jesus wasn't what they thought he would be. There were some rough times for them. Peter even got the brethren and said, let's forget about all this and let's go back to what we were doing for a week. Let's go fishing. And so there was so much going on. Even after the resurrection, Jesus was talking with Peter, and he made Peter say 3 times that he loved him. And sometimes that's the best therapy you can get, is having to face up to the fact that even though somebody sorely disappointed you, didn't do what you thought they should do, surrendered into what you thought were forces that should have been beaten down, taken care of. Kind of like Paul with Alexander and some of them, they all said Paul lost his power because he couldn't even do anything about Alexander or anybody else talking about him. So, Jesus made Peter feel that way. They weren't expecting a crucifixion. They weren't expecting him to die. They were not expecting him on the cross to bow his head, cry out, and die. And they weren't expecting a dead body to be hanging on that cross. Not one moment did they. And so Jesus said to Peter, he said, do you love me? Peter said, yes, Lord. He said, then feed my sheep. He said to Peter again, do you love me? Yes, Lord. Then feed my sheep. Peter, do you love me? You know, Lord, I love you. He made him say 3 times. Peter denied him twice, so Jesus made him say he loved him 3 times. Because he wanted to give some positive reinforcement that those denials were not how he really felt. And as they all came through their feelings and came through their disappointments, in the end, there was Jesus in the room with them. And you know how great that had to feel to them. So I was thinking about all that this morning, and I've written down that I thought that I would talk a little bit on the movements of the spiritual government. We've been talking on both the spiritual and natural governments. Thought I'd talk a little bit on the movement of the spiritual government this morning. And in Mark 16, it said, when the Sabbath was over, very early on the first day of the week, they came to the tomb at the rising of the sun. It wasn't the setting of the sun. It wasn't the closing of the day. It was a new day. First day of the week. Brand new day. Brand new time. Brand new period. Moses and Elijah sitting at the tomb, waiting on them to get there, and speaking to them, telling them. Those 2 angels were in the movement of the Spirit no matter when it was. There were 2 angels, 2 cherubims that guarded the garden, which were Moses and Elijah. There were two cherubims over the mercy seat, Moses and Elijah. There were 2 angels on each end of the tomb, Moses and Elijah. There are 2 angels that show up in Revelations 11, Moses and Elijah. They've been with the movement of the Spirit all the way through. In fact, they are the movement of the Spirit. Those are ministries of Christ. And so Paul makes a statement. We'll talk just a little bit on the movements of the Spirit, movements of the spiritual government. In Hebrews 12, Paul wrote, said, "Therefore, since we have so great a cloud of witnesses surrounding us, let us also lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily besets us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us." I notice here that Paul says us 5 times in one paragraph. And he's talking about a cloud of witnesses, and he's talking about a cloud of witnesses is surrounding us. And let us also lay aside every weight and sin, which is what we should do. As us, there shouldn't be any weight left upon us. There shouldn't be any sin that you think about yourself. It just shouldn't be there. That should be completely gone. I have never sinned in the first place. I've never done it. Sin is nothing but an illusion. And we've come to that fact and that understanding. So lay aside all those illusions and all those things that made you think there was something wrong with you. Just lay them aside. Those so easily beset us for the longest period of time. But now, let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. It's a level playing field. It's a clean field. It's ours. It's level now. There's nothing against you. There's no ordinances against you. There's nothing is against you whatsoever now. You're totally clean. So Paul wrote that in Hebrews 12, and he was talking about a cloud of witnesses. And the spiritual government moving in the earth, when it does, it has purpose. Something doesn't just happenstance. When the spiritual government, when the Spirit begins to move to adjust the government or the power that is controlling the earth at that time, when he makes a move in that manner, it's for a purpose. It's not just to be different. It's for a purpose, and it brings the needed personnel and development into the earth at each step. When he was ready to move in any generation, at any creation point, every time he was ready to do that and make his move, if you notice, the correct people were in the earth at that time to receive it, to do it, to act upon it on every time. So he sends, not only does the Spirit move in growth to shift the powers in the earth, but he already has all of his people, manifestation, whatever you want to call them. He already has all of his flesh in the earth that he needs to make that move with. And they pick it up and they move with it. Growth is a must. And what seems like a long time is just a pebble of millions of years movement. Just look at 6,000 years. We would say 6,000 years from Adam till now. Wow. That's such a long time in our minds. It's just a pebble in a pond. It's nothing. And we think, he's moved from Adam, and he moved down through and into Noah and into Abraham, into Jesus, into the church ages, out of the church ages to where we're at. Thousands upon thousands of years, such little movement. It's like me moving my finger right now. It's nothing. Time is nothing. And when we can understand that, all these moves that we think take such a long time, moving out of the great rainbow spirit into the pillar of fire, out of the pillar of fire into the theophany logic, out of that into spoken word of the earth, out of that into the last 6,000 years of humanity, you would just say to yourself, geesh, millions of years, so long, just a blink of the eye, just a moment. It's just a moment. We have reviewed time and time again the movement of the Spirit across eternity. And we've looked at that, or we've talked about cycles of all the seals, the trumpets, the candles, the plagues, the thunders, cycles of the mind from theophany to carnal to spiritual, cycles of the movement in civilization from the Rainbow Covenant to the Pillar of Fire to the spoken word to human. All of these movements, they're all movements of the Spirit to bring on a shift in the power or in the government that is regulating and moving across the earth. And so we've reviewed that time and time and time again. We only have a small measurement called time, but we know there is before time and there's after time. And so we keep inside this moment of time. It's a very small measurement that we know of, that we can think about in this carnal mind. We only have a small measurement called time, but we know there is before time, after time. You know, it says time should be no more, and it's said in the beginning, and we know there was a before the beginning. So we have all those wherein the same government is on the move, whether it's before time, in time, or after time. It's the same government. It's the same power. It's the same Spirit. He's just shifting the load, if you want to call it that, or the power, or the way in which we move and control ourselves. He brings governments into the earth, and he brings them different governments for one reason: for growth. Think about the governments that are in the earth in the one world government as they are moving towards one government. Every one of them have been for growth. No matter what you call them. We look at some of them, call them socialism, we call them communism, we call them fascism, dictatorships, republics, capitalism, imperialism. You could just go on and on and on and on with all these controlled governments, and all of them are set up with good intentions to bring growth in a community or in a nation or whatever it might be. Now, some of them don't work out too well because you don't find, like we said Friday night, you don't find a benevolent dictator in most of them. You don't find a person at the top or peoples at the top that are thinking about their nation, their peoples, their communities. They're thinking about what they can embezzle or what they can take or what they can get from you, and it makes it into a government that's not very good. So we reviewed all those, and we see it as moving in time through sections of measurement in order to help us understand and define ourselves better. The creations, the forms, the shapes, and the progress of its processes are the way that the Spirit defines itself and its identity in eternity. I can identify the Spirit as Jesus. He defined himself over 33 and a half years that this is the character of the Spirit in his fullness, bringing us a redemption plan. I can define the redemption plan. I can define the intercession. I can define the mediation. I can define brother and sister, mom and dad. I can define family. I can define home. I can define all those things which I couldn't define before. That power had to move into the earth, and I had to move with that power and grow in it to understand it. Body change, I understand it now. Glorified body, I understand it now. Rapture, totally understand it. I understand all these things because I moved through the growth of it, and there was a section of time where I measure, we can identify ourselves as many of those things around us. By our creations, by the forms that we made. I understand what a bird is because I created one, and it's right out there, and it's hopping around in the yard right now. Some blackbirds, some robins, some sparrows, some of them eating off my seeds out there. I can define a squirrel because I created squirrels. I know what it is. I move that creation into growth. I can define human beings because I created one. Here I am. And so we do these things by creations and forms and shapes. And we progress through the processes of it. We progress through different processes that came into the earth. You know, you look at the wheat, and we know the process. We've said it a zillion times. It planted as a seed, it dies, it raises, it comes out as two blades, goes into the stalk, goes into the tassel, goes into the husk, and then into the seed again. And so we see the processes. We know, we've talked about the process of the devil and how that it started out as a serpent. He started out as Lucifer, and then he became the serpent, and then he became the devil, and he became Satan, and he became the red dragon, and he became the son of perdition, and on and on and on. It was processes. It was you and I going through these processes. So all these processes, I can now define myself. I can see where I was each one of those things at some point in my life, and even today dealing with some of those things in my life. And the processes of life, for life messengers. You know, I came through, I understand being totally free of sin, totally free of the weight that so easily besets us, like I read about Paul's writing. I can see it because of the process I came through. I came through justification, and I came through sanctification, and I came through restoration of gifts, and I came through the baptism of the Holy Spirit, and I came through all of these things, and I come back to the full Word, and I can look at myself now, and I can see how I laid in all of those illusions, believing that's what I was, but through my process, I can now look and say, that's not what I was. I never was that. I'm a new man. I understand who I am now. So it takes all those processes. We know that eternity is a person. Eternity is not an amount of time. Eternity is not something beyond time on each end. Eternity is a person. Eternity is a person, and eternity just continually unfolds itself. And so the way it does it, we see it as it defines itself, it identifies itself, it understands who it is. We know that eternity is a person, and it just continues unfolding, rolling out its attributes into the earth. You remember what William Branham said, and I think it's in The Rising of the Sun. He was talking about that cloud, and he said, that's our Lord Jesus up there. And said he is continually unrolling and unfolding himself. So out of that cloud, out of us, that cloud of witnesses surrounding us and who we are, out of that cloud, it continually unfolds and rolls itself out. And as it's doing that, we see the spiritual movement of the governments or the different things. The church governed for 2,000 years. Rome governed for 1,200 years. Napoleon governed. Alexander, Greece governed for close to 1,000 years. You could just go on and on and on. Israel governed for long periods of time. All of those things were different governments that moved into the earth. And then there is all of your prophets. You just start naming them. Every one of them was a government or a power that moved into the earth to shift the power and bring the people to something greater or something else that was going to happen in the earth. All of these things were forms of what's going on. We know that eternity is a person, and it just continues unfolding, unrolling, and it's putting its attributes into the earth. And the spiritual government moving into the earth moves through the cloud. That's what it does. It comes through the cloud. It brings itself into shape and into form. And what is the cloud? Do you know what the cloud is? It's people. When William Branham went into that cloud, when I went into that cloud, I didn't go in there and see streaks of light flying everywhere. When you step into that dimensional realm, you speed up, you step into that realm, and all of a sudden it's hundreds of millions of people is what's all around you. And it's beautiful, and when you're there, the people are beautiful, and they're beautiful in their age and in everything. It's just amazing when you step in there and see what's going on inside that cloud. And that cloud, if you remember in Matthew 17, on Mount Transfiguration, when that cloud dropped down and surrounded Peter, James, and John, just exactly the way Paul said it's now surrounding all of us. He said, we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses. When that cloud surrounded Peter, James, and John, they saw Moses and Elijah walking around in it. And they saw Jesus in his glorified condition walking around in it. They seen all these things. And when they began to come back out of the cloud, it was so glorious to them, they wanted to set up temples to all these things and everything else. And the voice said not to do that it's Jesus only. It's just one person. And he's unfolding himself in so many different ways. So the cloud are the people. Rain clouds are what? What are all those rain clouds up there? When you look at a cloud, what do you think it is? You think it's smoke floating around up there? It's water. Clouds are water. And what is water in the Bible? All the way through the Bible, the symbol water is people. And so the rain clouds, as we look at them every day, they are symbolizing exactly what's going on in the earth. People walking around. And so we have rain clouds are a type and a pattern of people. We know the symbol is water of people in the earth. The movement in Genesis to come into the earth was to move over the waters. Have you read Genesis 1? Start out with the first verse, go through about verse 4. It's a move over the waters, the cloud over the earth. And there came forth a people, a creation from the cloud. In the beginning, the Spirit created the heavens and the earth. The Spirit is the cloud, the people. Created the heavens and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep. And the Spirit was moving over the face of the waters. It was moving over the face of the water. The Spirit was moving in the people. You say, oh, it's talking about water. I don't think so. Read your scripture with a spiritual government in mind. And stop reading it so literal. The Spirit was moving over the surface of the waters, the people. Then the Spirit said, let there be light. And there was light. People began to show up on the earth they had created, and they were full of what? Light. Let there be light. And there was light. And the Spirit saw that light was good. The people moving into the earth, taking shape, taking form, doing things was a good way to express itself and begin to feel everything. It felt the earth. It felt the heavens. It felt the clouds. It felt everything. And as it began to move into the earth, the light was good. And the Spirit saw that the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness. He let them understand what they knew, but they still didn't know a lot of things. And he took the unknown and the known and separated it apart and said, now you are full of light. Begin to seek more. Begin to understand more. Begin to take this darkness that you don't know anything about and discover it. And he separated the light from the darkness. And he called the light day. And he called the darkness night. So we see all of these things out here are symbols of exactly what was going on in the bodies that had come into the earth and have begun to take up the earth and have begun to live in the earth and have begun to lighten themselves by understanding of walking in the earth. So we see that going on. There was a great cloud. There was waters, and the Spirit moved on the waters. And what began to happen? Theophanies began to drop into the earth. Like Isaiah said, I think, I forget the 50th chapter, somewhere in there, Isaiah makes a statement. He said that the people, us, dropped like dew from the heavens. It was theophanies moving into the earth, taking form, taking shape, putting on earth, putting on things, beginning to develop things. And what did we do? That was the evening and the morning of the first day, and then come the second day and the third day and the fourth day, and all the way through. What were we doing? Creating, creating, and creating. It was us here doing the creation in the earth and bringing creation that would help us understand the unknown. We were light, but there was an unknown part of us, light and darkness, and the darkness was separated from, and we had to move into the darkness and create and imagine and do the things we needed to do to come to understand ourselves. So we see the first great creation as a creation moving from a cloud of witnesses. That's why Paul talked about a cloud of witnesses. That's why all the way through the Scripture, I'll show it to you, all the way through the Scripture, when the spiritual government was getting ready to move in the earth to bring on a different power, a different view, bring on more light, pull out of the darkness more light, bring from the unknown things more things known. Every time the Spirit began to move in that manner and shift, that cloud was present. It was there because that's how it moves. A cloud of people, which is you and I. We are in that cloud right now, walking and surrounded by this great cloud of witnesses, and we're walking in it right now.
You never left it.
So we see this. And the Spirit, let's go to the next one. The Spirit put a bow in the cloud as a covenant unto Noah, that he would never again destroy the earth with its seed times and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease. Oh, wasn't that pretty? A rainbow hanging up there for Noah to look at. You think that's what it was? I believe the whole time that ark was floating and that ark was on the face of the waters, there was a mighty cloud hanging over it. And that cloud was the same cloud you've seen on Sunset Mountain. That cloud was the same cloud that moved in Genesis 1. And it hung over that ark. And when that ark opened up and they come out into a brand new day with a brand new government, that cloud began to drop seeds right into the earth. And they begin to fill the earth up and multiply it again with theophanies. And they took on human bodies and they moved into the earth. And they walked in the earth. And they talked in the earth, and they moved under a different government in the earth, and the cloud did all of those things right there, hanging over Noah. He put a bow. It didn't say in the clouds. Go back and read it. He put a bow in the cloud. Or he made a covenant. Those people in the cloud made a covenant that they would never do the earth that way again. We said we're done doing that. We've learned some great lessons, and we'll never go through that again. And and the earth is going to remain here. It's going to have seed times. It's going to have harvest. It's going to have cold and heat. It's going to have summer and winter. It's going to have all these things, and it'll never cease. And we'll not do this again. We made a covenant in the cloud that we wouldn't destroy the earth. So when the spiritual government moves, it's moving in a cloud of witnesses every single time. And the cloud of fire stayed between Moses and Israel and the Egyptians. All night there hung that great cloud between Moses and the Egyptians, between Israel and the Egyptians, and took a strong east wind, opened up the Red Sea, and that cloud hung there and protected them and took them across the Red Sea and took them to the other side, and that cloud never left them. Have you read your scripture? It said he was a pillar of fire by night and what? A cloud by day. You think it was just a little rain cloud? No, it was the cloud over them, protecting them, leading and guiding them. And out of that cloud they got quail. Out of that cloud they got food. Out of that cloud they got water. Out of that cloud they got everything. Just like you today, you get food, you eat, you drink, you walk, you talk, you learn. You're doing it in the cloud all the time. So we see this happening all around us. And it happens all the time. And Israel, every time they needed something, where did they turn to? The cloud. We don't have food to eat. And the cloud dropped it every morning like dew on the ground. And they went out and picked it up and ate it. We don't have meat to eat. The cloud gave them quail. We don't have water to drink. The cloud told Moses, go smite the rock, give them water. All the things constantly took place, and that cloud protected them all the way through. All the way through, that cloud has been around us. We have a cloud of witnesses. You talk about a resurrection, all the way from the time of the first creation when the cloud covered the earth and began to drop its bodies into the earth, and we begin to live through the cloud, walking in the earth. And the cloud took them through the terrible destruction of Noah. And the cloud brought them out of Egypt and walked them through the terrible days of the wilderness. That cloud was with them all the time. And that cloud was you and me. How can that be? We were in the cloud. That's the angels that came to Jesus in Gethsemane and worked with him and talked with him and encouraged him to keep going. That's the angels that in Elijah's day. And Elijah saw a cloud in the shape of a man's hand in the heavens. It hadn't rained for 3.5 clouds in the sky. There wasn't said. And it was just, the heavens looked like fire. And Elijah and his servant go out there one day after 3.5 years. They had faced Baal and all of his false prophets. They brought it to an end, and they walked out there, and there hung that cloud in the shape of a man's hand. It wasn't a rain cloud. It was a great cloud that has always shown up whenever a movement of government is ready to take place. And down came that cloud into the earth and began to rain into the earth. And when it did, away went Elijah. He was killed. Jezebel was killed. Elijah was raptured. The whole government changed. Jehu took over. You can just go on. You can look. And Elisha took over as a prophet. Everything began to change as soon as that cloud moved into the earth. And it began to change those governments. And it began to change the powers that be. And it began to change the way they lived. Where they went to for their fellowships, who they dealt with, the nations that dealt with them. It changed everything. The day Elijah caught that little cloud hanging in the sky. at the ascension. You know, we look at all these things. And I'm talking to you about Easter. I'm talking to you about what is going on with us and how that we are a great cloud of witnesses. At the ascension, while Jesus was talking to them, you read Acts 1. I don't have to go over there and read it. A cloud came and received him up in their sight. And while they were watching the cloud, two men, wonder who that was, clothed in a cloud, came and said to them, Moses and Elijah said to them, the same way that you have seen him go, in like manner he will return. A cloud of fire, a pillar of fire, a people. And we say, well, Sunset Mountain's the first time it came back. I would beg different. I read in Acts the 9th chapter, where there was a pillar of fire, a cloud that came down, smote Paul off of his horse, and Paul said, who art thou, Lord? This great cloud, this thing that they seen. Some heard the voice, some saw the light. And Paul said, who art thou, Lord? And he said, I'm Jesus of Nazareth, whom thou persecutest. I ask you this question, who was Paul persecuting? Jesus had already hung on Calvary, and Jesus had been put to death, buried, resurrected, and was received up in a cloud. But the cloud said, I'm Jesus whom thou persecutest. He was persecuting the people. The people had become the flesh body of Jesus. Someone asked me the question, said, Brother Parnell, that body that Mary met him in at the tomb, what body was that? And I said, it was his resurrection body at the time. Because that body did have to get up out of the grave. That body of Jesus, that literal body that hung on Calvary, was smitten and beaten so bad till you couldn't even tell who he was. And Joseph of Arimathea took him and laid him to rest in a tomb. And that body, that same body, got up. And when it got up, he changed himself. Mary didn't even know who he was. Cleopas and Simon didn't know who he was on the road to Emmaus. Read the book of Mark. When they were on the road to Emmaus, they couldn't tell who he was because he had changed. So that body of resurrection body was the literal body of Jesus, but then he took that body and he put that body back into the cosmos where he got it from, and he has become our body. We are his body, and this is the flesh that Jesus is wearing around today. Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? Who art thou, Lord? I'm Jesus of Nazareth, the one you're putting in jail, the one that you're shutting down churches, the one, he was all the witnesses surrounding Saul, and Saul was fighting against this great cloud of witnesses and fighting against the weight and the sin that so easily beset him and made him stay with Moses' law. And that cloud returned back exactly the way these people, exactly the way these two men said it would. It returned back and it took over that ministry of Paul. The same way that you have seen him go, in like manner he will return. I believe that. I believe it's already happened twice. You come over to the 10th chapter of the book of Revelation, and you read that 10th chapter, and it says, I saw a mighty angel coming down out of heaven, clothed with a cloud, and the rainbow was upon his head, and his face was like the sun, and his feet, as creation, moved right down out of the cloud into the earth. in Genesis 1. We watched the creation move down out of the cloud into the earth in Genesis 8. We watched the creation move down out of the cloud into the earth in 1 Kings 17th chapter, Elijah. We watched the cloud move down into the face of the earth, and it took over Pentecost in Acts 2, and it split up, and it went into each one of them and filled them full. The same way that he said he would come back, he did. He did it on the day of Pentecost. He did it to Paul, and now here he is doing it again. This great cloud of witnesses. The same way that you have seen him go, in like manner here return, I seen a mighty angel coming down from heaven. That was in Revelations 10. You know, if you go over and you read in Revelations 14, you've seen an angel with a sickle in his hand. If you go over to Revelations 18, seen an angel that came down from heaven and enlightened the earth with his glory. Seen all of these things were going on, and this angel had a sickle in his hand. He had a book in his hand. There's all kinds of different things that this angel, this great cloud of witnesses had, that they were bringing governments into the earth. There was a government that came into the earth, which was a government of harvesting. And that government came, and that great sickle came into the earth, and men like William Branham and all the way back through Paul, Arenas, Martin, Columba, they had a sickle in their hand, and they were harvesting everything out of the church ages that they could harvest, and bringing us to the unknown and opening up the darkness and bringing light. And then what took place? When the sickle was finished, what was next? Here's the same angel, the same being, the same light, the same cloud, the same people, and it's no longer a sickle in their hand, but it's a book. We're supposed to be doing the things to prepare and bring the great government into the earth. Well, there's a government coming into the earth now, and it hasn't been here before. It's a one world government. And it's a one spirit government. A one spirit government being this spiritual movement coming out of the cloud and dropping the people that need to be here at the time into the earth through their mothers, through their fathers, bringing them into the earth, bringing them up through their family situations, teaching them the differences of light and darkness, night and day, teaching us our education, showing us who we are, and breaking us open to love divine, the understanding that we have. It's all going on at the same time. These things were purposing in the earth. Luther came.
Okay.
It does that on and off. It was just the intermission, that's all.
Yeah. You got to do it.
Okay. I think it's up. Is it up?
My phone is rebooting. It's,
Oh, yours went down too?
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You check yours. Oh, it's already on it. Okay.
Yeah, I see that running now. So each time that the spiritual government was going to shift power in the earth, it brought the cloud on the scene to do it. Now, when we see these things around us, it's not that we're not in the cloud. We are in the cloud. But those things come present. Those things become nearer. Those dimensions kind of close into one another in order to shift a government from one thing to another, from one dispensation to another, from one creation to another. We've seen it do it in creation time in Genesis. We've seen it do it in Noah's time. We've seen it do it in Elijah's time. We've seen it do it in Moses' time. We see it do it all the way through, and the cloud will show up, but it is to wake us up and make us realize there is a shift in the government going on. And when we recognize that and understand that, it's easier for us to make the change. And that's why it shows up so much. This mighty angel,
He came with a sickle in his hand to do the harvest. He came with, if you look through the zodiac, and he came with an ear of corn in his hand. He came with seed in his hand. He came with all kinds of things in his hand. He came with a sickle in the book of in the book of Revelations. He came with a little book in his hand, and he comes with so many things. Well, now he's come with this great book in his hand, and the redemption plan is finished. The book is open, and the names in the book are being called or being brought from heaven to earth, are being dimensionally brought into here for the purpose of moving us over into a brand new creation. For the purpose of moving us over into a spiritual government that'll bring the earth to a one world government, that'll bring the people to a one spirit government, one spirit system, to understand. And when I say a one spirit system, if you haven't been listening, what I'm talking about is there's no other spirits out there except the Spirit of Christ. And the Spirit of Christ is evolving these things to himself now, or to us. We understand who we are, and we're bringing the entire earth into a kingdom according to the book of Revelations 11 and 15, 16. We're bringing it to a kingdom that has taken over all the other kingdoms of the world. And it's the kingdom of Christ. It's when that angel came with a book in his hand, he came also, if you go over there into Genesis, and he took that stone and he cast it, and this great cloud, it took a stone and cast it into the earth, and it struck Babylon. And Babylon was torn to pieces. It was destroyed. This great stone crushed it. And we see that exactly over in the book of Daniel, the 2nd chapter and the 3rd chapter in there. Daniel saw a great stone cut out of the mountain, and this great everything that was in its way. And that's what you see happening now. This great stone would come into the earth at the same time that there were kingdoms in the earth. And these kingdoms, if you go back and look, one of them said, Daniel talked about it, and one of them would be a kingdom of iron, and the other one would be a kingdom of clay. And it would have 10 toes, and it would come out, and then there would come a stone cut out of the mountain, and it would crush the mighty kingdoms, and that stone cut out of the mountain would take over. At the same time the stone was cut out of the mountain, these two great kingdoms would be here. And we had a prophet on the scene with a stone in his hand, and he said that that stone was the message that was coming forth to shift us in to a different power out of the church ages, move away from all that. And at the same time, there was the great kingdom. Eisenhower over the United States meant iron and clay. So there was the United States and Russia, the two greatest powers on earth, and at the same time, an angel from heaven with a stone in his hand cast this great stone into the earth, out of the cloud. Every other kingdom in the earth. There's not one kingdom that it has not crushed. There's not one kingdom that it is not changing. And there will be no other kingdoms left except the kingdom of Christ when this is all over. And it'll be an amazing place to live. This mighty angel came down out of heaven, clothed with a cloud, a rainbow upon his head. His face were like the sun, and his feet as pillars of fire. Another great covenant being set up. A rainbow in the cloud being set up in the earth the same way it was in Noah's day. A brand new creation. As it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the coming of the Son of Man, when the Son of Man is revealed. Sunset Mountain brought the cloud into plain view. It was put in magazines, Time magazine, Look magazine, Life magazine, Popular Mechanics magazine. It was put everywhere across the world, a mysterious cloud. Oh, all of them have something to say about it now with but we know what it was. It was Christ himself, the people beginning to drop into the earth under a brand new message, under a brand new day. Theophanies dropping into the earth, into families, into moms, into dads, moving into the earth and beginning to grow up into love divine and into this great message that we have today. What a resurrection it has been out of dead church ages, out of dead denominationalism, out of dead governments, out of man-made governments, out of all these things. What a mighty resurrection it has been out of the cloud, bringing us into the earth and bringing us up into harvest, through summertime, through heat, through harvest, through seed, through everything. We have made it through, and we've come to the other side of the mountain. It was Sunset Mountain. The cloud was made plain once again and moved us upon the face of the waters across the great sea of civilization. Moses moved upon the face of the waters across the great sea of civilization, stepped out on the other side, and it was a brand new day. And we stepped into the spiritual ark. We stepped into the spiritual movement of the government of Christ, and we moved across the face of the waters, and we come out on the other side. And this great Sunset Mountain, while it took the whole world under, while it took every nation and crushed it, while it was doing all those things with the mighty stone in his hand and with the book, he also had a chain. You remember? He seen him, he had a chain in his hand too. With that chain, he bound the devil. Our message, what is our understanding? We took those processes, we bound them up, we made them a part of our process, we put them in the chain just like everything else. It's the devil's process is just like the chain of justification. It's just like the chain of the seals. It's just like the chain of the trumpets. It's just like the chain of the mind. All those things were chains or processes that we moved through, and we took a chain and we bound, or we completed and finished up the devil. And we bound him up and we fixed it up where he had nothing more to say. He can't hinder us. He has no weight. He has no sin. He has no kingdom. He has no place he's staying. He has no place that he is. It's not even a he anymore. We recognize it's just a process of us coming through these great things. And we've taken him off of the throne. He is not an entity. He is an attribute. That's all he was. He was a process. And we took that off of the throne as an entity and said, let's put it where it belongs. We came here as Lucifer, a great light shining. We stepped into serpent and we began to move through the development, through the space of time, and we took on being the devil. We took on being Satan. We took on being the red dragon. We became the Leviathan. We became the snake. We became all of these things. We became it all. And we passed our way back through, and we became the son of perdition. And then we became the prodigal son. And when we became the prodigal son, the father said, have you had enough? And the cloud began to move in the earth. And the prodigal son said, I just go back home. I got a whole lot more there than I've got anywhere else. I've got a father that loves me. I've got brothers. I've got everybody there. I can go back and I can enjoy myself. And the prodigal son turned, and the one that had become the red dragon and the devil and all of these things, Lucifer, woke up and went back home, stepped back into his understanding of who he is, finished up the process of the devil, and came back and came out of the cloud. And now there's a new spiritual movement going on, and that is a movement away from the devil, away from all of that iniquity, away from all of that sin, away from all of that illusion. And there's a brand new movement going in this day, and that is love divine. That is the great book, the great chain, the great stone. We chained the devil up. We crushed his kingdom. We opened up the book of redemption, and we are looking into these things and understanding what all has been redeemed. What a beautiful message and understanding we have come to in this day. That we could take this great book and open it, that we recognize that we are worthy to open it. We took the great book, we took the chain that nobody was able to do. Nobody was able to bind the devil. Nobody was able to put him out of their minds. Nobody was able to get rid of the condemnation. We all had it, and it come all the way down through the ages. Even the fifth church age messenger feared. He said, even though I know what justification is, I fear every day that I'm lost. That's a fifth church age messenger. And we've come past that completely. We have chained up, we've taken the chain, and we chained up the devil. We chained up, we made him a part of the process. And if his face shows up, we say, don't worry, that's just a part of the process. And we go through it. And we evolve and we continue to grow more and more and more. As we look into the redemption plan and we see all the names, all the glory, everything's going on. In that cloud, Sunset Mountain, that cloud hanging there. William Branham made a statement. He said, Moses was there. Elijah was there. The sages were there. We were all there. That was his statement. We were all there, Easter seal. Do we understand that? That cloud is us. We are all there. Nobody's missing. When Jesus finished up and he resurrected, I'm sure that he had a great time talking with Judas, telling him what a great, great, great manifestation he had produced and what he had done. And not to worry about what his reputation would be down through the ages. That I'll bring you back to your glory. You, Judas, are the prodigal son. I'll bring you back to your glory. Here we are this day, bringing him to the proper glory that he needs for what he did. Judas and Jesus, all the way down through time, the twain have become one flesh. The scripture said that the twain, the ordinances were there, all these things, there's a middle wall of partition, everything's there. But it said that middle wall will be torn down and the twain will become one flesh. What do you think that's talking about? It's talking about all the way down through time, those twins that you had, all the way down through from Cain and Abel, down, down into Ishmael and Isaac, and down into Jacob and Esau, and all the way down, and those twins walking, Moses and Balaam, and Moses and Korah, and the twins that were all across the universe that show up all the time. Those great twins, Jesus and Judas together. The twain have become one flesh. How did it happen? We took a book in our hand. We in the cloud began to bring a different government into the earth. And this government had amnesty. This government had mercy. This government had all the things it needed for every person that had an ordinance against them, for that ordinance to be removed and done away with. And this government brought in the entire redemption plan. And it says you're free. You're totally free. Easter Sunday morning did that for all of us 2,000 years ago. It's taken us this long. It's taken us 6,000 years coming through all the cloud, all the way over into this cloud, and now we are the cloud in the earth. Moving, talking, walking. The cloud is setting itself up in the earth. It's not in the sky anymore. It has moved into the earth, and the kingdoms of the world have become the kingdoms of our Lord. It's a great day we're in. It's a great understanding we're in. You love him? Sunset Mountain brought the cloud into plain view. once again, and moved us from the face of the waters, across the great sea of civilization, into a new spiritual government, into a new world. And a world came about when we sat down on the other side. We sat down on Sunrise Mountain. It's a brand new day. It's not sunset. It's Sunrise Mountain now. Love divine. Therefore, since we have so great a cloud of witnesses surrounding us, let us also lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily besets us. And let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. Listen to me. Everybody's yelling the end of the world. Oh no, this is the end of the world. Cuban Missile Crisis. End of the world, end of the world. It's going to blow everything up. Russian, when the walls go, end of the world, end of the world. People's going to get a hold of all those Russian bombs. They're going to destroy everything. End of the world, end of the world. SARS, end of the world. HIV, it'll infect the whole world. We'll all die of AIDS. End of the world. Coronavirus, end of the world, end of the world. Listen to me, you young people. When you get my age, you that are 15 years old now, 12 years old, 20 years old, you're going to hear it a million times. End of the world. It ain't ending. New governments move into the earth. Spiritual governments from the cloud bring the people needed into the earth to make the moves into greater governments. And it's happening all the time. And I don't know when it'll be, but run this race with endurance. Mm-hmm. You're here. Set aside the weight and the sin and all the illusions of those other governments. Set them aside, put them away, and know that you are here for the duration. You are here and you're going to bring it further into Aquarius, and you're going to bring it further into greater imagination and greater creation. And you're going to eventually, some generations out there who may not ever hear my voice naturally are going to bring it into Capricorn. They're going to bring this thing into the earth and make it work. More than imagination, but a manifestation. How long will that be, Brother Parnell? 2,054 years from 1996 is when the sun moved into Aquarius. Okay? 2,054 years it will remain there. And then there's another 2,015 years in Capricorn. 4,000 before we'll move out of the government of the zodiac, so to speak. And all of these other governments are just embedding the zodiac and all of its beauty into the earth. All of these things are happening. And we moved into a brand new government, a kingdom of the Lord. And from Adam's day to now, it's been moving forward, every movement of that spiritual government. And now we're down here and we moved into a greater government, a greater kingdom of the Lord. And it'll continue to evolve and manifest. And you'll see some horrible atrocities while it does it. You'll see a lot of things humanity will do and wish it hadn't done. And it will correct itself as you go for hundreds and thousands of more years until we come to an understanding, an amazing understanding that the mind of Christ has taken over the earth. And it is evolving and it is becoming greater and greater. This government, this spiritual movement that's happening now is one more great movement in the kingdom of our Lord. Not going to be another. Don't think this is the last one. This government is going to move and move and move and move, and it's going to pull the one world government right along with it. And it's going to happen time and time and time again. And we are a great part of this. And do not lose hope. Stop thinking about the end of the world and stop thinking about the coming of the Lord. He's here. He's been here. Stop thinking it's going to get greater. He's going to fly someday. He's just going to come down out of the heavens. He's here. He ain't coming from nowhere. He's here. We are alive. We are doing exactly what the Spirit of the Lord wants us to do. Government, and in so doing, we see the natural government all around us progressing into a one world movement. Trust that you are a great part, but a phase of what's going on, and there will be others.
If you're here, it's proof that he's here. Don't have to look for something outside yourself.
That's right.
If you're here, that is proof that he is here. I and you and me. I'll never leave you. Never. Over time and time again, he said it.
That's right.
He's showing us. He may not be that body walking around with long hair and a beard and sandals. That was just a projection, a human projection of him. But his spirit is projecting through these bodies right now.
That's right.
If you're here, he's here.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Anything anybody wants to say about it?
Brother Edwin Aroma asked a question. In relation to visitations last 2002, 2003, 2004, 5, and 6, how is it related with the one world government? So your visitations 2002, 3, 4, 5, 6, how is it related with the one world government?
Well, if you remember, in 2001, just prior to all of that happening, the Twin Towers came down.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a shift in government. The world, not just the United States, but the world has never been the same since. There was a huge shift in government, and that's what brought on the great spiritual movement.
Mm-hmm.
2001, if you remember, I was supposed to be in those towers on that morning, that Tuesday morning. At 8 o'clock, I was supposed to give a tour. And there were 7 others, and then there was me. I would have been the 8th person. And at 8:20 a.m., the plane struck those towers. Struck the first tower, which I would have been in, and I would have been at the top of that tower giving a presentation and getting ready to do a tour. That evening before, I felt like I should not go. I was here in Fairborn. I called the office in New York and I said, I don't really need to be there for this tour. Please, can I just come in later in the day? And they said, yeah, what you're going to be doing with the corporation will start at like 3 o'clock, so come in on the flight that gets in about 1. We'll pick you up at LaGuardia. I said, okay. And so, and I told him, I said, Jamie, I don't feel like going. I'm not going to New York, so I don't know what's going to happen, but I don't feel good about it. I'm staying home. Well, that next morning, 8:20, all of those people that were in that tour, of course, died in it. And I would have been there, but I was, quote, in symbol, the 8th person pulled out of the fire. The 8th day. The eternity keeps going on. Eternity doesn't die in the 7. Eternity is never complete. There are 7s and there are 3s and there are 5s. It's never complete. It just keeps moving on and on and on. And so it was eternity pulled out of the fire, or a new government coming into the earth. The guy that came out of the old government, out of the 7, out of the Twin Towers, out of the destruction, comes over here in 2002 and bang, here comes the new government. Spiritual government. I get visitation, and he talks to me about great things that we had not seen before. I get 2003, the visitation in March. I get 2004, the woods of the prophet, and we just kept coming through 2005 and 6. All of those visitations where the Lord and I'm not trying to glorify myself, I'm just looking back at it. It's where the Spirit pulled a person out of the fire of the old governments and then came and set up a new government in him. Now we move on. Mm-hmm. It's more than just me. Mm-hmm. It's a movement of the people. All of the right people were already in the earth. The Edwins were sitting right there in the Philippines. The Louis were sitting there. The Mittas were sitting in New Zealand. You could go on and on and on. There were people all over the world that had already moved in from the cloud, were living here and prepared themselves and was getting ready for the new government to take place. So the old government gets crushed. Mm-hmm. In 2001, Twin Towers fall. The new government comes in 2002, 3, 4, 5, and 6 with all the visions and the visitations. By 2008, we were well on our way to understanding what had taken place. Mm-hmm. By 2014, bang, here comes the government that was moving its way in, love divine, and it opens itself up. And we have been learning in love divine and coming through this great period for 6 years now. Mm-hmm. But that, to me, that's how it relates.
Mm-hmm. It's another question from Michael Aina. Forgive me if I mispronounce your last name. What is the message we must understand with the COVID-19 pandemic? Why now?
Well, it's a pandemic, whether we want it to be or not. They made it so. Qualifies as one like we've had before, like the Spanish influenza and HIV, and those were some pandemics. This one, I don't know. But the governments of the world have certainly made it a pandemic, and the Spirit of the Lord is in it. There's no doubt in my mind about that. This is what I see in it. COVID-19, do all you can. I will tell you that right now. Do all you can to keep from getting it. It's out there. There's a virus out there. And it can kill you. So I'm not belittling that, and I'm not trying to take the concern out of that. It's there. It's with you. It's among the people. And stay clean. Use what you need to use and stay home and do what you need to do to keep from getting it. But I think that the whole thing has been a movement the same way that Moses did in Egypt when he blanketed Israel and Egypt with the covering of the blood. And then they did, every year they took the Passover lamb and they put it up for 14 days. And when they put it up, they would bring it out and sacrifice it. And it would be a move. That year, a spiritual new government moved into the earth and everybody was clean for a year until the next year. And then they did it again. I think that's what COVID-19 has been. It has been a blanket across the earth to bring the governments to one world government, to bring us to a one spirit world where that we love one another. It's pulled us that much closer together to do things for one another, to love one another. It's done everything that it can to blanket the earth, cover the earth, and become a time of micro, internal, checking yourself, and it's the symbol in the earth today that we've all gone micro. That's what it is. I personally would listen to my government. I would listen to them. If you're asking that, do what they tell you to do. Don't take it lightly. It is a virus and it can kill you, but it is a symbol of something much greater going on. A movement of the Spirit of the Lord in the earth to blanket the earth and bring on a greater love for one another. If you remember Friday night, we talked about that declaration of Jesus. He said, a new declaration I give to you. Love one another. That went out. It was a spirit that came out of the mouth of Jesus Christ, and it has moved into the earth. He didn't beg people. He didn't ask people. He didn't say you can if you want to, but you don't have to. He said, love one another. You will. This is a declaration. Period. You will love one another. That's moving across the earth. As I said Friday night, however it comes about is that's something we all need to take a good look at and watch and be prepared. COVID-19 has brought us closer together. Will more of those kinds of things bring us closer? Possibly. Will greater spiritual movements of the government bring us closer? Absolutely. But it's all been purposed in the earth and we're all here for it. And prepare yourself, because we are going to do exactly what Jesus said. We are going to love one another. Whatever circumstances has to come about to make that happen, it will happen.
Is there no other questions?
Okay. Have anything anybody wants to say? Have a great year. This is Easter morning. Easter afternoon now, I think. Here. So most of you are finished, but have a great time. Stay healthy. Watch the spiritual movement of the government in the earth. If somebody's sitting back here bringing you the same old message, they missed the move. They missed what's going on. They have missed the spiritual movement in the earth. Don't stay back there. Sooner or later, whether it's on this side of the veil or the other side of the veil, they'll catch up, but don't stay back there. You move with the spirit movement in the earth and what's happening today. Keep moving. I want to stay with 60 years ago. Go ahead. I love you. Smack your tent pegs down there and stay. But don't be sending me your messages, because I don't want them. I've got other things to do, greater things to do.
That's right.
Yep.
As we all stand here, we are exalted. We understand who we are. We understand our day. It's a great day we live in. We are the Christ. We have declared ourselves to be so. And by the authority, heal us, take care of us, lead us, guide us. All of this spirit that's in our midst, continue to move inside us. And we believe with all that's within us through the Christ that we are today.
Yes.